Did Indiana truly lose Game 5 against Las Vegas, or were they flat-out robbed by referees who seemed determined to control the outcome? From the opening tip, it wasn't just about basketball. It was about survival against forces bigger than the opposing team. Every whistle, every stoppage, every call seemed to lean in the same direction, straight toward the defending champions. And as fans sat glued to their screens, the reality began to sink in. This wasn't just a semifinal game. It was a trial by fire. And the verdict felt pre-written before the ball even left the court. Aaliyah Boston, the cornerstone of Indiana's young dynasty in the making, found herself targeted from the very start. She wasn't battling just the aces. She was battling a whistle that seemed to follow her every move. Early fouls piled up, soft contact turned into full-blown violations, and what should have been clean rebounds suddenly became whistle-blown possessions. Then came the knockout punch. Her sixth foul, a phantom call that pulled her from the floor in the final seconds. Fans screamed, analysts shook their heads, and Boston's stunned expression told the whole story. The game didn't beat her. The refs did. Meanwhile, Kelsey Mitchell was enduring a nightmare of her own. Guarded by suffocating defenders, she was hacked, pushed, and grabbed at every turn. The whistle? Silent. She poured in 15 points, draining shot after shot, refusing to surrender. But the relentless abuse took its toll. Her body gave out, cramps seizing her legs until she collapsed and had to be carried away. That wasn't strategy. That wasn't defense. That was unchecked brutality ignored by officials who seemed intent on keeping Vegas comfortable. And as Mitchell disappeared into the tunnel, Indiana's chances seemed to vanish with her. Yet from the chaos emerged an unlikely hero, Odyssey Sims, a player signed on a hardship contract, someone who wasn't even supposed to be here. And yet, under the brightest lights, she became the engine that refused to die. 27 points, 6 assists, 50% shooting, all against offenders who beat her down possession after possession, with zero protection from the refs. She didn't just score, she carried Indiana back into a game designed to bury them. Her fearless drives, her impossible layups, her ice-cold jumper tied it late. She wasn't just playing basketball, she was writing legend. Then there was Lexie Hull, playing through a back injury that would sideline most players. Hull still delivered 12 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. But her impact wasn't just on the scoreboard. Her defense disrupted Vegas time and time again. She dove for loose balls, cut off passing lanes, and refused to give the Aces an inch. And when the game ended in heartbreak, it was Hull who stepped to the microphone, her voice steady but unshakably furious. She demanded accountability. She called out the league. She didn't just play. She became the voice of defiance. Shey Peddy, often overlooked, became another lifeline. 13 points, 3 massive threes, and all at the moments Indiana needed the most. Without Peddy's fearless shooting, Indiana would have been swallowed whole by Vegas runs and referee-driven momentum shifts. But she wouldn't allow it. She spread the floor, opened lanes for Sims, and forced the Aces to defend honestly. Her threes weren't just baskets, they were lifelines. Every swish silenced the roar of Vegas's crowd and gave Indiana a breath of hope. In a game dripping with chaos, Peddy's steady hand on the trigger kept the dream alive. Yet the numbers exposed the truth more than any highlight could. 25 fouls called on Indiana. Aces stars practically living at the free throw line. Aaliyah Wilson with 10 trips alone. Boston fighting in the paint all night, only 2. That's not coincidence. That's control. Fans scream for justice. Analysts accuse bias. Social media erupted with side-by-side clips of missed calls and phantom whistles. The outrage wasn't about one call. It was about a pattern so blatant it could no longer be denied. This wasn't balance. This wasn't fair. It was a scandal in plain sight. And still, Indiana fought. Down players, down whistles, down their star center. They refused to fold. They clawed overtime on sheer defiance alone, fueled not by officiating grace, but by raw grit and heart. Odyssey Sims became unstoppable. Lexie Hull locked down. Peddy hit dagger after dagger. They stared down not only the Aces, but the referees themselves. Imagine playing 5-on-8, every possession tilted against you, and still refusing to vanish. That was Indiana's fight. That was their defiance. They weren't supposed to last, yet they forced the champions to sweat. But let's not forget the emotional toll. Boston's 6th foul ripped the heart from Indiana's chest. Mitchell's collapse left fans stunned, knowing her spirit was willing but her body was broken. Sims's relentless scoring carried hope, but even she couldn't shield her team from phantom whistles. And Hull, battered yet unbroken, embodied a team that gave everything, only to have the results stolen from their hands. This wasn't just a game. This was a robbery on national television, watched by millions who saw the same story. Indiana was robbed of their rightful chance at glory, and yet, through all of it, the Fever showed something greater than a scoreboard could capture. They showed fire. They showed resilience. They showed that despite injuries, foul calls, and stacked odds, they could push the reigning champions to the brink. This wasn't just basketball, it was survival. And survival, in its purest form, breeds legends. Game 5 became more than a semifinal. It became proof. Proof that Indiana wasn't just arriving, they had arrived. Proof that no amount of biased whistles could erase their fight. Proof that this young team was built for something bigger. Odyssey Sims, the late-season signee, transformed from a forgotten name to the heartbeat of Indiana's playoff run. Her 27-point masterpiece wasn't just numbers. It was courage made tangible. Every shot, every drive, every scream of defiance into the Vegas crowd declared one truth. Indiana would not die quietly. Sims didn't just keep the Fever alive. She became their battery, their inspiration, their fight condensed into one fearless guard. Her journey from hardship signee to playoff hero will be remembered long after box scores fade. In a game defined by chaos, Sims provided something more powerful: belief. Kelsey Mitchell's night was equally unforgettable, not for how it ended, but for how it burned. 15 points, perfect shooting from deep, and an offensive presence Vegas could not contain. She fought through defenders draped over her like shadows, refusing to yield. But her body gave out. Cramped, exhausted, broken. She left not because she wanted to, but because she simply couldn't continue. That image Mitchell carried from court, drained but unbowed, captured everything this Fever run represented. She didn't lose. She gave everything until she had nothing left, and fans will never forget it. And then Aaliyah Boston, the player who has already become the cornerstone of Indiana's future. She dominated when allowed, posting scoring and rebounding numbers that carried her team forward. But the officials targeted her relentlessly. Phantom fouls, soft screens, offensive calls on plays that barely registered contact. And when she fouled out, it wasn't because she failed. It was because the game was taken from her hands. That sixth foul was more than a whistle. It was a symbol of everything Indiana had battled against. And Boston's stunned face said it all. She knew Lexie Hull played injured, but never played small. Her defense alone would have defined her night. But she added offense, rebounding, and a voice of leadership that refused silence. Afterward, she spoke truth to power, demanding accountability for the officiating, and standing tall as the conscience of her team. She wasn't just a player. She was a symbol of Indiana's resilience. Fans rallied behind her because she didn't just fight on the floor. She fought off it too. Her words stung because they were true, and they transformed her from role player to rising franchise cornerstone. Shey Peddy's contributions were quieter, but no less vital. Her clutch threes kept Indiana afloat in moments when Vegas seemed ready to run away. Her confidence to pull the trigger under pressure created the space Sims needed to dominate. Without Peddy, the Fever don't reach overtime. Period. And that's the hidden truth of this game. It wasn't just stars. It wasn't just heroes. It was every piece of Indiana stitched together with grit and resilience, refusing to vanish under the weight of officiating bias. Peddy's threes weren't just shots. They were lifelines, and Indiana needed every single one. But the bigger picture stretches beyond Game 5. This wasn't just a loss. This was a preview of what's coming. Caitlin Clark returns next season, stronger than ever. Aaliyah Boston, battle-tested, will only grow more dominant. Mitchell, Hull, and Cunningham provide the toughness, grit, and leadership every contender needs. Add in veterans like Sims and Peddy, and suddenly Indiana's no longer the underdog. They're the storm on the horizon. What Vegas and the refs tried to bury in this series was something far more dangerous. The birth of a dynasty. The Fever aren't going away. They're coming. The fact is simple. A 6th seed, missing its superstar rookie most of the year, battered by injuries, forced to use hardship contracts, push the defending champions to overtime in Game 5. That is not an accident. That is not luck. That is power. That is promise. That is the mark of a team about to explode. And for the rest of the league, it's a warning. The Indiana Fever just went through hell and survived. And when Caitlin Clark returns to a team already hardened by fire, the WNBA won't know what hit them. The storm is building. So maybe in the end, the refs didn't just rob Indiana of a finals berth. Maybe they accidentally wrote a new story instead. A story of resilience, of defiance, of a team forged in controversy that will return stronger, hungrier, and more dangerous than anyone could imagine. The Aces may have advanced, but the Fever advanced too, in identity, in belief, in resolve. Game 5 wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. And the legacy of this run won't be measured in the loss column. It will be measured in the dynasty Indiana is now destined to build.